Alright, this week we're going to show you the progress I'm making on the truck here. So the main thing I've been working on lately is just cleaning the frame and pour 15ing it to just make sure it does not rust any more than it already has. And you can see this is the efforts of this week. We got almost the entire frame done except for the very front of the truck, inside and out, top and bottom. And I'll show you the steps we went through to do that and show you the tough part of getting the rear tank out, removing the supports underneath of it, removing the tow hitch, and removing the bumper. So let's get to it. Alright, so the main thing for us was to make sure we got this tank out, and then we had to also remove the tow hitch and the rear bumper. So we're going to take you through the process of doing this. The tank is a much easier removal if you have two people, and you'll see how me and my dad here took it apart. You're then going to see us move on to starting to heat up and then quench some of the bolts with a squirt bottle and a oxyacetylene torch, just because this is a pretty rusty truck, and that's how we were able to get all this stuff removed and off the truck. So stay tuned and check it out. So the whole trick behind using a torch to heat a bolt up to help it when it's very rusty is that as we heat the nut up, it's going to expand, and as we cool it down, it's going to shrink very quickly. And what this does is to help break that rust loose for us. So you can see we're going to be heating it up and cooling it down 3 or 4 times. And then we also heat it up and starting to loosen it while it's still fairly hot. And that's how we got these hard to move bolts off. So at this point we were able to remove the rear bumper, and that was just 2 bolts on each side with a nut that was part of the frame. And you can see now that we removed the wiring harness and some of the clips that hold that wiring harness in place, we are now moving on to actually getting the tow hitch off. And this one has 3 bolts on each side that go up into the frame. And these were pretty tight, but we didn't really have to use any heat at all on these. The electric impact took care of those, almost no problem. And if you are going to try to tackle this part alone, you'll see towards the end of this when we take it off, if you position this floor jack underneath of it as you disassemble it, it'll fall right onto it, and then you can move it right where you need to. Alright, so this was the not so fun part of this project, was taking this needle scaler and going all the way around and cleaning the truck. So on the very back here, there wasn't a lot of big, large flakes of rust that needed to come off, but it was just a lot of tiny flakes. So just trying to do a thorough job touching the top, bottom, inside, and out of each one of these to make sure we get any loose rust off before we start to use our Pour 15 treatment. I think altogether to do the rusted section you see here took me probably about 2.5-3 hours to clean it, and I could have probably gotten away with not being as thorough with it, but I figured do it once, do it right. And just to show you a little bit of the process here, we got a few more minutes of video of me cleaning and a little close-up coming up as well. So after about 2.5, 3 hours, we got the frame cleaned up to the best we can. The hardest spot to get was trying to maneuver in between all these, but we got most of the big sections chipped off, and actually I just saw one more right here, so I'll take the needle scaler through there. Needle scaler did a really good job. I did have an air chisel at first, which worked good, but it was a little too aggressive and would leave big indentations. So just to knock off some of this rust, that needle scaler really is the best bet. And now that we got this, we're gonna get it ready to prep and then put some Por 15 on the back half like you see here on the front half. And then we will have this frame cleaned up and back to its former glory. So, giant pile of rust from everything we chipped off, but now we are ready to actually start our Por 15 treatment. Alright, so for this Por 15 treatment, the first thing we need to do is rinse off the frame and degrease it, which is what you can see here. Once you have all the grease cleaned off of it, the next thing we're going to do is use what is called the metal prep. So basically what this metal prep does, and you'll see a picture of the bottle here, is it allows the steel to be slightly etched. So if it's not super rusty, it will etch it a little bit more so the Por 15 adheres to it. You can also see I'm wearing rubber gloves and a ventilator just for precaution, and it's something I would recommend just because you don't really want to breathe the stuff in or keep it on your skin. But you're going to see that I'm going to start spraying down the frame here, and what you need to do with this is to keep the frame wet with this metal etchant for 15 minutes so that it can soak in and begin to etch the material. After that 15 minutes, you then rinse the frame off and let it completely air dry before you apply your Por 15 treatment. And what it's going to do is help give us a surface that Por 15 will adhere to, and it leaves almost like a zinc film on the rusted area that we sprayed down. And that's kind of the telltale sign to let you know that you applied it properly. So here's just me going through applying it. Now I'm rinsing it off, and then we'll get ready to paint here in a second. So the last part of this treatment is actually using the Por 15 rust inhibitor now. You can see me and my dad are kind of doing different shifts. He's doing the from the bottom up, so anything he can see sitting underneath of it, and I'm doing the insides first and then moving to the outsides. And the reason I'm doing this is because this Por 15, once it gets on your skin, it's very difficult to get off if you don't take it off right away. And I'm sitting here probably about 3 or 4 days later after this, and I still have some black specks of the Por 15 on my arms just because it doesn't come off super easy once it dries. So just be aware that as you're painting, and try to make a plan where you can paint all the areas that you need to without actually having to reach over areas you've previously painted. With that being said, typically what's recommended is to paint everything once, let it begin to dry to where it is tacky, but when you touch it, none of it comes off or has appeared on your finger, and then you apply a second coat. So typically 2 very thin coats of this, and you can see me and my dad are using flashlights and headlamps just to make sure we can see where we're painting, and making sure that we can thoroughly paint every inch of this so that we cover it with this rust inhibitor to the best of our ability. And even with both of us tackling this at the same time, it probably took about 2 hours total to do both coats, so just make sure you have adequate time before you start. So here it is the next day after curing for 12 hours or so. You can see it's a nice shiny finish. Now without putting a UV protectant coated on this, it will start to fade like you can see right here, but overall cover the frame, and now we have a nice rust-proof frame moving forward. so we got everything put back together. We got the frame cleaned up, the tank back in, everything good to go. So like always, like and subscribe. Let me know if you have any things that I should try on this truck, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.